Ladies and gentlemen, now it's Too Late with Alan Mosley. Woo!
Yeah!
We're doing this.
I know.
It's happening.
Had a week off, and now it's like everything's new again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fresh. And,
I know.
Yeah.
Suddenly remember why we spent the whole week off saying we should just quit this shit, man.
Yeah, just done with
Done
it.
with it. Yeah. No, that didn't happen, you guys.
No.
Guys, welcome back for another episode of It's Too Late. I am your host, Alan Mosley, joined as always by the #1 producer in late night. It's Dave Willimowski. Dave! How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing good. I mean, there's a lot going on that nobody cares about, so I'm doing great.
Wait, hold on. What was that? Is everything all right?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Okay.
How you
You
doing?
can't just drop these bombs on me. Yeah, man, I don't know. Things aren't really working out with me and Mary. I'm thinking, you just do that.
No, that's just part of it. I mean, but
Oh, Jesus. We'll get to that in a second.
Do it good.
I'm feeling a little distracted.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Why?
It's been a few weeks now, and they still haven't found her.
On who?
Her, like my muse. Where are you?
Where is she?
Someday.
Can I just leave that on for a while?
Someday. We'll find her. Yeah. So, man, didn't we have so much fun on Monday night playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yeah, I really enjoyed playing that game.
You lying son of a- Well, I had fun playing the game.
It was.
It's old school art.
Fun hanging out.
Like that's what I was doing in 1992. Like I was sitting at home on my NES playing the Turtles arcade game with my brother until he decided he didn't want a younger brother anymore, and then I was into that. But
Wow.
but you could still play by yourself. It's one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an option.
yeah, it's probably should get used to that as an option, to be honest with you. But kind of had some awkward moments during the stream because I heard that the kids almost had 2 Christmases.
Oh, we were talking about that.
Yeah. And then, but the good thing is, like, everything has a silver lining. I think it's super important to be able to see the bright side of things. And so if you're a young person out there and you're listening right now and your mom and dad are Splitsville, at least you get to call your new dad by his first name. Like, you just call him Mike,
Oh, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can just call him. That's not for everybody, I guess.
No, yeah. Doesn't that... So actually, the way that joke was supposed to work is you were supposed to just say what you said the other night and say, yeah, well, we just call him Black Dad. And then I would do the whole bit. But you just jumped right in there, didn't you, Dave?
Yeah. We ain't got time, man. We got an interview. I got to watch the clock.
Yeah, jumped right in there, which is why the kids have a Black Dad now. That's what I'm saying. All right. Oh my God. You want to talk about this? Has been a rough day for news before we got to the show tonight. Big rippy to Irish singer Sinead O'Connor, who died today. Do we have a picture of Sinead O'Connor?
Yeah, on here.
Yeah, there she is. Oh, awful.
I haven't seen her in a while. Yeah.
Hate to see it.
She's looking good.
Well, a lot of people will remember Sinead O'Connor from her very famous appearance on Saturday Night Live, where at the end of her musical segment, she tore up the picture of the Pope, which was supposed to like bring awareness and talking about the Catholic Church covering for pedophiles and child abuse, because she was a big advocate for, children and the those that need protected. Yeah, but I'm always reminded. Well, I understand why she did what she did, but on the other hand, it's like, is this really the best way to be drawing attention to where it needs it? And besides, like, for every 1 kid that gets raped by a Catholic priest, like 100 get raped by like school teachers. And I don't see her tearing up like a picture of like an elementary school,
Yeah, well, that'd be harder to encapsulate.
Yeah, I mean, because it's just objectively true. I mean, more kids are abused by public school. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's not really a joke. They just do it. Yeah, I mean, I don't want them to
get the laugh react, but I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, we need a nervous laugh react.
Nervously, yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
We're not really sure where this is going.
Oh my God! Also, breaking news about Republican Senator Mitch McConnell. Do we have a picture of Mitch McConnell?
Yeah, let me pull that up.
Yeah, there he is, right there.
Oh, that's a great shot.
Mitch McConnell actually froze today mid-speech on Capitol Hill on what some people were saying was some kind of medical episode, perhaps a stroke.
Oh.
But, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to the power of technology, we can actually hear what was going on in Senator McConnell's mind during the incident. Take a look at this.
Bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Oh my God, the Obama suicided their chef and just dumped his body in a lake at Martha's Vineyard. I bet it was because he saw Michelle's dong. Oh God, I've seen it too. They're going to do me next. I got to get out of here. What? Oh.
Anything else you want to say? Or should we just go
Yeah. Yeah, 11 inches.
say anything
Yeah.
else to the press?
Flaccid. Yeah.
I'll take it.
Flaccid.
Let's go back to
Go ahead, John.
You know what the worst thing is that I actually saw people posting online saying, well, I don't always agree with Senator McConnell, but I hate to see something like this happening to a public figure. And I'm like, the only thing that I hate to see is that he's still breathing. I want that motherfucker to die. Like, the clip would have been so much better if at the end he just face planted, you know?
Just crumple.
Yeah. Like, I was like, oh my God, it's another McCain moment. Yes! And then he walked off. God dang it. Off to find some more adrenochrome. All right. And the hits just keep on coming tonight. In sports news, Bronny James, the son of NBA superstar LeBron James, he had a medical episode of his own. Do we have a picture of Bronny?
Oh, let me look that up. Yeah. There.
Yeah, there's Bronny. Pure white.
Wow.
Come on, dude. Dave, of all the Bronny pictures you could have picked, you picked the one that said pure white on it. Really?
I did a Google search and
All right.
just went with it.
All right, whatever, dude. So yeah, apparently he actually had cardiac arrest at a basketball practice at USC. Apparently he's in the
That's
intensive
scary.
care. Yeah. Yeah, those basketball practices are safe and effective, am I right? This is really not unlike what happened to actor Jamie Foxx, who reportedly was temporarily blinded and paralyzed due to a blood clot. Do we have a picture of Jamie Foxx?
Yeah, I have so many pictures.
Yeah. Yeah, temporarily.
Man.
Come on, dude. Yeah, temporarily. And of course, there's even the sad case of actor Lance Reddick, who was not so lucky to recover from his. He actually passed away. They called it natural causes, but that were undisclosed, despite him being a healthy, fit man. You know what? I think I'm starting to see a pattern here. What do all these victims of safe and effective have in common? I got it. This is how we get the normies on board to become anti-vaxxers. Vaccines are racist. Which,
Oh.
well, actually, yeah, they kind of are. Now that you mention it, they are pretty racist. All right.
You know.
Yeah. What do you think? Commercial break?
I don't see why not.
You sound nervous. All right, guys, we're going to be back with the meme of the week and the viewer mail right after this commercial break. Don't go away. It's okay, Dave. What the hell? What? Why was that playing?
Nothing happened.
It's true. The band is just going nuts tonight.
Yeah, they had a couple extra people sitting in.
Yeah, I think they're upset because last week we had like a musical spot, and they're like, "Oh, you're just too good for us now, huh?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, couldn't fit you in.
Yeah. That's what she said. But not to me though. Hey, Dave.
Yes, Alan.
What time is it?
It's time for meme of the week.
Oh yes.
Pages.
What is love?
Uh-oh.
Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more.
that guy.
Yeah, he doesn't
Yeah, he's got to
put
come.
any words over him.
I really hope he's the special guest at next year's live event. It's that guy. Yeah. But we do have a bonus meme. Check out the bonus meme.
Oh man.
Why don't you add mushrooms to the pizza? Sure. My God.
A little introspection.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. But before we answer any questions, guys, let me tell you about tonight's sponsor, which is Fox & Sons Coffee, which you can find at foxandsons.com. If you use promo code ITL, you get 18% off your orders of $25 or more. Shipping's always free over orders of $37.99. That's foxandsons.com. Check this out. I've actually got the Den Blend light right here at my desk. Can we get a shot of that?
Let me bring it.
Yeah, just if you just shake it, like I've learned this, you don't have to shove your face in it. If you just shake it and just, just
You don't have
waft.
to slap it.
Yeah. But no, you're not going to do.
See, I almost had you. Almost got you.
Quit edging me, Dave. So that's Fox & Sons Coffee, which you can find at foxandsons.com. I'm sure Steve appreciates us having an edging joke in his ad.
I'll leave that up for that. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and answer some viewer mail. We basically only have a minute left in the show, so we
can do
better.
that.
Yeah. All right. The whole viewer mail tonight is speed round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Aaron Kentner writes, "Dear Alan and Dave, what's the worst song of all time?" Dave, worst song of all time.
Oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. And I'm gonna jump on the bandwagon and say it's probably a Beatles song.
Ooh,
Did they
yeah.
ever release that one with Yoko?
You know
Or
what?
she
The
just-
Beatles are the most overrated band of all time. That is always my answer for that. But as Aaron already knows, the correct answer is "Landslide" by Fleetwood Mac.
I love that song.
You know what, Aaron? My real answer was going to be whatever Dave is listening to, because Dave has terrible taste in music, and he proves me right. He proves me right. All right.
Ocean Spray guy.
Josh Wright writes, "Dear Alan and Dave, how many toddlers could you defeat before you were overwhelmed?" Dave, toddlers.
Ooh, I'm gonna say it's gonna be like upper 50s. They're not they're not focused enough. They're gonna be all over the place. They're not gonna have a coordinated attack. I can just start picking them off one at a time, and yeah, it's gonna be a lot. I'd have to literally be buried in toddlers.
Yeah. Well, my question is like when you reach the point of complete physical exhaustion, how exactly are they going to kill you? Like, I guess theoretically, if you were on the ground, they could go for your eyes and.
I think they'll just smother you.
Yeah, but I mean, just don't. Like I feel like if you just briskly walk away, you just avoid this whole situation.
That is an option. Yeah, they
Yeah.
lose interest.
Yeah, I would say it's a lot though. If they were like zombie toddlers, completely obsessed with nothing but your demise and had no regard for their own safety, I'd still say at least a few dozen, because
I'm with you.
Because I mean, they're going to need some regard for their safety. Because I'm not just going to be like punching and kicking. I'm anyway. All right. Ryan Seifert writes, "Dear Alan and Dave, what is your most embarrassing sexual experience?" Ryan. What?
And also, no.
Ryan, here's the crazy thing. So, like in viewer mail, you could be like, "Hey Dave, what's your favorite color?" Like most people, when you meet someone, like if you got a chance to meet your favorite celebrity, you'd be like, "Oh my God, I wonder if he's just like me. Hey, do you like pie?" But Ryan's question is, "Hey, Celine Dion, what's your most embarrassing sexual experience?" That's Ryan's answer.
Hey, can you say something on the internet that you can never take back?
Yeah,
It's
right.
just out there now.
Yeah, right. I don't know, Ryan. Ask your mom. Let's see. Jonathan Kranza writes, "What is the stupidest thing you ever believed? That I could be a podcaster?" Dave, what about you?
One time my cousin told me that child labor laws had to do with kids having babies, and I didn't really believe him, but I kind of did.
Yeah, well, kids shouldn't have. They're not ready for that.
There should be laws against that.
Yeah. D3 asks, "Dear Alan and Dad, have you ever cut off the tip of your cock?" Excuse me?
It works better without the text.
Okay. You got to get a hold of him before it's too late. Like he's
Yeah,
spiraling right now. Spiraling right now. It's probably not entirely my fault.
No, not. Can't help but feel somewhat responsible though.
All right, you chose poorly, D3. All right, see, Mary Lynn Willimowski writes, Dear Alan and Dave,
Oh.
when you make yourself a sandwich, when you make yourself a sandwich,
Why would I do
Dave,
that? I'm married.
do you cut it in half before you eat it? The sandwich, Dave.
Oh. No, not for myself. I mean, if I'm trying to make it for somebody else and I want it to look pretty, I'll cut it and then I'll rotate one, and then I'll have like the soup there and stuff. But for myself, it's just make the sandwich and eat it.
Chat says I do it all the time. It helps the goo come out faster. Our chat, you know what? It's chat.
Wow.
It's chat that put him up to
It's
it.
not our fault. Yeah.
No, not ours. Let's see, Oppenheimer or the Barbie movie? Neither. I don't really go to the movie theater.
Oh, that's expensive.
I don't even remember the last movie I went to go see.
Yeah.
What's the last movie you went to see in a movie theater?
In a theater, I can't really remember. I remember we did go to a drive-in, I think last summer. I don't think we've been to theater in a while. But we saw some Secret Life of Pets or something, but that was at the drive-in. I don't remember the theater.
Wow, that sounds gayish. Andrew Amy writes, Dear Alan and Dave, if your dog gives birth, is she guilty of littering? I tell you what, if we get any more questions like this tonight, I'm going to rip my own cock off. Celeste Ennis writes, Dear Alan and Dave, have you ever gone down a slide on a piece of wax paper? Is that a thing?
I didn't know it was a thing, but that's amazing. That sounds like life-threatening, and I'm here for it.
You know what? When I was in kindergarten, that was the first thing I saw of like violence upon another person. There was this girl, there was this really tall slide. I mean, I when I was in kindergarten, it was far enough back that they would just let the kids go and do dangerous things at recess.
Lord of the Flies out there.
Yeah. So this girl gets up on this slide. That I mean, the top of the ladder of the slide is probably at least maybe 1.5 stories in the air, and she just, I don't mean down the slide. I mean off. Yeah.
Yeah.
She went down the slide, but the side of it, as opposed to down the slope, and she landed like on her elbow and broke her arm, and I saw it happen, and I was like, wow, neat.
Yeah. I didn't know we could do that.
Yeah, all the other kids were like, teacher, and I was like, oh my god, me next. Yeah. All right, and finally this evening, Brian Johnson writes, Dear Alan and Dave, have you ever been to see a movie in the theater, and in the first few minutes you realized this is going to be good?
Whoa.
You ever been to see a movie in the theater, and after the first few minutes you thought, ooh, this is going to be good? He says The Matrix did that for him.
Oh, you know what was for me? It was was it the first Lord of the Rings, where it starts out with that battle scene?
Yes.
And they got that huge guy, and he's just and just wiping dudes out.
Yeah.
That would.
You know what? I was going to say Lord of the Rings too, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I already knew what Lord of the Rings was, but I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be dope. You want to hear a fun nerdy Lord of the Rings fact? Did you know that in the actual literature, they never describe Sauron as using any weapon at all? The only thing they ever describe him in the books as using are his hands. He's just out here killing motherfuckers with his bare hands. Like everyone else has swords and spears and stuff, and he just goes out there and starts clapping fools.
Yeah, just grab and hold.
Yeah, just picking people up and crushing them and slamming them on other people. That's metal as fuck right
with
there.
Another dude.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sauron was the first. He was the first guy to hit a motherfucker with another motherfucker. Yes, he did it. All right, guys, we're going to be back after the break to talk with our friend Patrick MacFarlane. Right after this. Don't go away. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for It's Too Late with Alan Mosley. Email us at info@alanmosley.tv. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Our guest this evening is a blood-sucking lawyer. He's some kind of cold-blooded amphibian-type creature. But he also happens to be the Justin Raimondo Fellow at the Libertarian Institute, as well as the host of Vital Dissent, which I have abbreviated as VD in my pod over here. So go check out some VD over at vitaldissent.com. Patrick MacFarlane, welcome back to the show.
You see, the VD was actually, it was a feature, not a bug of the name. So, and also I prefer reptilian and not amphibian. I think there's a slight difference, but you kind of get the picture.
Yeah. Well, I know this audience does. That's for sure. Patrick, it feels like I haven't talked to you in a while, but I actually looked it up. I think you were on the show just a few months ago. But there's been some big changes at the MacFarlane house since you were last on the show. Tell us about it, buddy.
Yeah, so my wife gave birth to our third son. So every time I go around town, there, the people in my small town, they're like, "Oh, my three sons," right? Because that was a sitcom 50 years ago. So definitely something that I have figured out. Look it up. I don't know. It's a show. That's all I know about it.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit you with this since you brought it up. Since you were last here, did you ever look up Night Court on YouTube?
No.
What?
Yeah, I'm remembering it now for the first time.
God damn it. All right. Well, anyway, check out Night Court. So this is your third son. So let me, when you're doing your family planning, does thinking about future housework, lawn care, and paralegals factor into how many children you're going to have?
Definitely the paralegals part. I enjoy lawn work like any self-respecting red-blooded American. So we'll see how that goes.
All right, good. Well, now, Patrick, speaking of things that have developed over the last few weeks, I think myself, just as a lot of us, have been inundated with advertisement after advertisement. You can't go anywhere without seeing it. TV, news, social media, you see it just scrolling through Twitter. Everything is either Barbie or Oppenheimer, and then they somehow fused together and became Barbenheimer. I think that had something to do with some sort of AMC special where you got like the two show matinee. You saw Barbie and then you saw Oppenheimer. Interesting choice, by the way, to put Barbie first and Oppenheimer second. But anyway, the Patrick I know would not just sit on his laurels and let Hollywood and Christopher Nolan whitewash the legacy of one J. Robert Oppenheimer. Patrick, tell us about your new film.
So this is really like a year and a half in the making. This film, I had no idea there was a film about Oppenheimer coming out when I started doing this. I read this book called Behind the Fog by Lisa Martino Taylor, and essentially I was interested in there was an experiment, zinc cadmium sulfide dispersal experiment that the Army Chemical Corps did in the 50s. And this is really the definitive book on it. But before she starts talking about it, she goes into the background of radiological weapons. And it really got me into this kind of sidetracked place where I had no idea that the Manhattan Project scientists had injected people with plutonium, and that at the same time they were developing the atomic bomb, they were also developing offensive radiological weapons, which basically the idea is to detonate a dirty bomb that would basically salt the earth and create like a small Chernobyl to deny the enemy military, but also enemy civilian infrastructure. And so it was really something that I wanted to work on and tell people about. And then serendipitously, the Oppenheimer film was coming out, and I was like, man, I got to get this finished and get it out. And so we did. me and my producer, Mises Pieces.
Now, just for everybody at home, that is part 1 of the Truth About Oppenheimer is actually available right now for free. You don't even have to pay for this type of quality content, ladies and gentlemen. You don't even now. You could pay Patrick a little bit of something, but you don't have to pay to watch it. But I think, Patrick, you can correct me if you have a different opinion than I do. But I think for most people, a lot of people probably didn't even know the name Oppenheimer until it kind of came back up in the news, kind of related to the Christopher Nolan film coming out. And Christopher Nolan, on a film side of things, I think a lot of people have an opinion that Christopher Nolan's extremely hit or miss. Like, you have these huge blockbuster gems, and then every other one in between will be these kind of like weird psychoanalytical type films. By the way, have you gone out to see the new Oppenheimer film yet?
Fuck no.
Why not?
I actually wanted to last Friday, but with the new baby, and I couldn't really justify, because my parents and my sister wanted to go too. But I couldn't justify leaving her alone with the 3 kids with the small infant for 3 hours. I mean, it's a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
So we were going to do it, and then I kind of felt guilty, and I was like, well, I shouldn't go. But the opportunity really hasn't presented itself. And my mother-in-law is visiting right now and helping us with the baby. And it's so nice to have her here and have the help. But I'm not about to go out, and spend an entire night by myself watching a film when she's here visiting. So we're going to spend that time together.
Is the mother-in-law in the room with you right now, Patrick?
No.
Just blink twice if you're in trouble.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
No, there's no guns pointed to the back of my head, but there are guns behind me.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's lots of guns pointed. They're just not into the back of your head right now. I see that.
Yeah. And we're not going to watch It's Too Late with Alan Mosley tonight. That's not what we're doing.
God damn it. All right. Well, I was going to say, like, you could still go watch Oppenheimer. Just take everybody with the new baby with you. All the other patrons in the theater will love that, Patrick.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sincere about wanting to watch it, because I recognize that there's an autistic side to me, just like a lot of people in this movement. And obviously, Christopher Nolan's main priority when making a movie about Oppenheimer is not going to be talking about the plutonium injection experiments that were going on behind the scenes. I mean, he's interested in creating a compelling, narrative, a compelling piece of film. But it's a shame that so often the effect of that is to, in a way, kind of rehabilitate the morality and the moral struggles that Oppenheimer had. But I think a good result of having the film out the way it is that it doesn't exactly paint Hiroshima and Nagasaki in a positive light. And I think it gets people talking about, and at least grappling with the morality of dropping the bombs, even though a lot of it is just like, well, war is hell. We had to win World War II, and the Japs were evil. And why'd they do that to themselves by not just, unconditionally surrendering?
Yeah, exactly. Those 100,000 civilians had to die because they didn't just surrender. They didn't. So they just all had to be nuked. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But
it saved lives, Alan. It saved millions of lives that, we'll never know if that's actually true, but we'll just say that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a feel-good story of the year, this Oppenheimer. Now, I kind of want to nail on just talking about the guy himself for a second, and then we'll dive more into it. Of course, he's being played by what's his name, the Scarecrow.
Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, Cillian Murphy. I don't know. He's a foreigner.
I think it's Cillian. I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know what they say about Irish people. They're the never mind. But
supremacy.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that you watch the trailer, you see some of the clips, and every single one of them kind of revolves around this great struggle that this individual man is going through. They portray it as if the events are just simply unfolding around him, and he's just none the wiser to the horrors that will surely befall the people that are associated with the experiments or that are going to be on the receiving end downrange of his work. Is that an accurate portrayal of the man?
I obviously I wasn't there, and I can't read into the minds of men, especially men that are now dead, and have been for a long time. But I think there are context clues, and I try to provide that context. And I don't think knowing what the contents of my documentary are and those facts about Oppenheimer's life, I would have to say I don't think that's the whole complete story. I mean, maybe he felt a little bad in hindsight, but I think that when you put together his early history, being diagnosed as profoundly schizophrenic to the point where psychiatrists said that psychotherapy wouldn't help his profound schizophrenia. The fact that when he was in his graduate studies, he tried to kill his professor, that's in the movie. But I asked people about what was in the movie, and there wasn't a lot of stuff about the fits that he would go into, where he would be like talking to himself and like collapsing to the laboratory floor and rolling around and going through these hysterics. And I don't think it's in the film that he tried to strangle his friend, Francis Ferguson, a former classmate at Harvard, and that he had several other incidents where he was acting just completely erratically. And then fast forward a bit, when you review his correspondence, you see that he was actively, he knew and encouraged and sanctioned and supervised these human experimentation with plutonium and radioactive materials, in injecting people with plutonium without their knowledge, and had even talked about expressly developing radiological weapons, which the purpose of which was to kill hundreds of thousands of people. That's a direct quote from one of his letters. So I don't think that there's this profound disconnect, Alan, between we treat people like Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy and BTK like, the murderers that they are, the maniacal, evil serial killers, when their body counts are in the double digits. And Oppenheimer is directly responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands. But for some reason, we feel the need to defend him, that we can't approach him with the same critical kind of approach and analysis of his actions and his psychology. I just think it's a strange thing that we do.
Well, when talking a little bit about his background and the we'll say mental challenges that he suffered, if you will, it's I think it's hard for the layman to think that he could arrive in the position professionally that he was in. Like, were these? I mean, surely. So I mean, he's being employed by the U.S. government, right, to develop things that are going to harm lots of people. There's not mincing words about it. And one would think, I mean, goodness knows I'm not working in HR for the federal government, but one would think that these are the kinds of red flags that you can't have for someone that's helming such important research, such top secret things happening in multiple facilities around the country. And yet he did. So I guess that kind of brings me around to, did the powers that be were they just unaware of how afflicted this guy was? Or is that exactly the kind of person that they wanted? Or was he genuinely, I mean, I don't necessarily mean this in a flattering way, but as a matter of fact way, was he genuinely such a genius in his field that the risks were worth it?
I think that when Leslie Groves was putting together the team, putting together the team that would prosecute the Manhattan Project, I think he specifically chose Oppenheimer because he was the best person for the job. And I think that being the best person for the job, there are certain qualities that you would like for someone who would head a project like that. I think the managerial experience, and certainly the experience that Oppenheimer got at UC Berkeley after his graduate studies at Cambridge, I think that, but I think the most peculiar quality about him that was selected, and I quote this in the documentary, is that people would say that Oppenheimer had the ability, he had such charisma that he had the ability to turn bright men, even geniuses, into slavish followers. And I think that, I don't know if it was his schizophrenia, if it was this strange energy and charisma that he had that was best. And I think that Leslie Groves identified this about him and said that is the person that will inspire these scientists to get the job done and will manage them the best. I think that obviously Oppenheimer was a genius by any standards. I think that he was a brilliant visionary scientist, but there were a lot of them at the time. A lot of them were already engaged in the war effort at the time, and that was part of the struggle of selecting the team. But I also do think that there was something unique about him, and maybe his unhingedness, his willingness, and the willingness of a lot of the Manhattan Project scientists, the demonstrated willingness to flirt with ethical boundaries and ethical guidelines and kind of toe that line a bit.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about, because I know he wasn't the only one involved in these experiments. But speaking of testing radiological weapons against people without informed consent, do you like hot sauce, Patrick?
I do.
Well, let me tell you about the Tennessee Hot Sauce Company, which you can find at tnhotsauceco.com. If you use promo... Danny loves our ad reads, Patrick. Don't even worry about it. If you use promo code It's Too Late, all one word, you get 10% off your entire order. I've actually got some right here. This is the Blood Orange Ghost. Yeah. The dark red and black label should tell you kind of all you need to know about this particular sauce. It even actually has a personable and problematic meter on the side, and this one is problematic. So that is the Blood Orange Ghost, which you can get at Tennessee Hot Sauce Co., which is tnhotsauceco.com. Use promo code It's Too Late. Now, Patrick, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want you to tell us, because I've seen part one of the documentary, and I want you to tell us about some of the other guys who were involved that, we'll say, found some gray area in the moral and ethics of these experiments. Right after this commercial break. Don't go away. It's Too Late with Alan Mosley is proudly supported by Fox & Sons Coffee. Fans of It's Too Late use code ITL and receive 18% off orders of $25 or more. Shipping's always free on orders over $37.99, so get yours today at their website, which is www.foxandsons.com. It's www.foxandsons.com. Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're back here with my good friend Patrick MacFarlane here talking about his latest documentary, The Truth About Oppenheimer, which you can find. I know it's on YouTube. Is it anywhere else, Patrick?
Yeah, it's on Odyssey and Rumble and BitChute as well. And I put everything on. I put it all on Twitter too because I got cucked out to Elon Musk and I paid the $8. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's pay to play, man, don't hate the player, hate the game.
That's going to be the quote that I put in the show notes for this whole thing. Is that right there? So I actually watched part one of your film this past weekend, and I know that you spend a good chunk of time in that first part, not just talking about Oppenheimer, but talking about some of the other gentlemen who were involved in the project around the same time. A couple of guys in particular that also, we'll put it politely, didn't seem to have too many qualms with some rather risky experimentation with perhaps volunteers, but volunteers that didn't exactly enjoy informed consent. So tell us a little bit about that and explain for the layman what informed consent is and why this is such a big deal medically speaking.
So when you talk about medical malpractice, and I did practice a little bit of medical malpractice in my career, but when you're talking about falling doctors and medical health providers falling below the standard of care, one of the ways that they can do that is fail to inform someone about all of the risks and benefits of a procedure and the nature of the risks and the benefits of the procedure. So every time you go in and have a procedure done, the doctor is supposed to come in with you, or maybe a nurse in some cases, and read you a form that you sign for informed consent, saying, if you get this done, you will have the benefit of your cancer being cured. Possibly, it's a small chance, but you have the risk of infection. The risk that the doctor might cut the wrong limb off or something. Like all those different things.
It happens, yeah.
Yeah, it does happen. You put a big red or a black X on the leg you shouldn't cut off. So I posit that, much like the COVID-19 vaccinations, when you have a product that's only been out for a couple months, you have absolutely no long-term, you have no data about long-term risks and effects. So in a lot of ways, you're unable to provide that informed consent. And in the 1930s, there were these devices called the cyclotron. And cyclotrons, and I'm not a physicist or a nuclear physicist or anything like that, but from my understanding, they produced radioisotopes, which was radioactive particles, if you will. And at the time, radiation was not very well understood at all. I mean, you had some of the first X-rays kind of going on a few decades before, I believe, but you also had the first ability to create radioactive substances at will. And it was John and Ernest Lawrence were two scientists that were pioneering this technology at the University of California, Berkeley. And so they created a cyclotron, were making these radioisotopes. And very early on, the question became, well, we're creating these particles. Of course, we can weaponize it. We can possibly unlock energy with this. But are there any biomedical applications for the beams, these, I think, neutron beams that are created in the cyclotron? So essentially, you had scientists who were pioneering this study of radiation and how it affects the human body. And Robert Spencer Stone, and Joseph G. Hamilton were two scientists that were studying at the University of California, Berkeley, and trying to develop biomedical applications for the cyclotrons. And a lot of what they were doing, some of their colleagues, their criticisms were that these human experiments they were running in the mid-1930s, the mid to late 1930s, were rushed and that they were stunts. And they might have been trying to get funding. They might have been trying to be visionaries, because essentially they were trying to treat cancer and find ways to do that. And now I don't know too much about chemotherapy, but I do know that treating cancer with radiation is like the primary treatment modality for treating cancer. But they were really the pioneers when they did that. And there were some dubious experiments towards the end of the 1930s where Robert Stone was taking patients from the Visible Tumor Clinic and patients who had cancer from the University of California, San Francisco Medical Center, and irradiating them with the neutron beam from the cyclotron and observing what happened. And needless to say, there were like 60 something people who he treated, and half of them were dead within 6 months. Now, of course, they had cancer, so it doesn't mean that all of them died because Robert Stone irradiated them, but there were some really severe and profound side effects, and at least a few of them died because their tumors weren't controlled, or because the side effects of being irradiated was the direct cause of their death. And he admits in his study, I put the study on the screen and I read it, that 13 of them were so ill to begin with that they probably should not have been treated. So these experiments were later kind of condemned by the Atomic Energy Commission, but it wasn't until 40 or 50 years later. And that was after Robert Stone became, I think he was a supervisor of the Manhattan Project's Chicago Met Lab, I think, one of the affiliated locations of the Manhattan Project.
Now, so I mean, I remember from having watched the first part here, there was some rather gruesome tales of what happened to some of these people. Some of the people actually died of malnutrition because they actually developed so many lesions and ulcers that they couldn't eat and drink. I mean, it's pretty gruesome stuff that happened to people. But I think what a lot of folks will find interesting is that so we segue from we're pioneering this research of course, for the betterment of mankind. We're looking at potential medical uses, and then somehow that then translates into weaponizing that technology. So where does that come into play?
I think that Oppenheimer went around, of course he was appointed to basically helm the Manhattan Project, and he went around trying to find scientists who would move out to Los Alamos. But I don't think many of them didn't have to, because there were these affiliated universities. And that's another interesting angle to this, is the role that our universities have to play in developing these military weapons, and how basically in bed they are with the military industrial complex and aiding it. But I think that they were recruited because at the time there were not really a whole lot of experts, or there were no experts at all on the effect of radiation on the human body. And so when you have the Manhattan Project beginning, you have hundreds of scientists and workers at Los Alamos who are being exposed to radiation. And that was really the first time in history that that had ever happened. And so Louis Hempelman, who was the director at Los Alamos of the medical center there, he was studying the effects that radiation had on all the scientists. And in a way, he called it, and I think Robert Stone called it as well, one vast experiment, that these people being exposed, they needed to be studied so we could understand it. But at the same time, there's an interesting kind of relation to Robert Heinlein, who is, of course, known as being like a libertarian-ish fiction writer from the 40s and 50s. Him and his John Campbell, I believe John is his first name, but his editor, Campbell, came up with this idea for radioactive dust being used as a weapon. And it's a little unclear exactly if he was fed that, because I know that Heinlein, he was a naval officer and he had some intelligence connections. I don't know if he fed that or vice versa, that it was fed to him, that this was something that was being looked into. But soon after, he writes a story called Solution Unsatisfactory about using radioactive dust as a weapon. All of a sudden, the Manhattan Project scientists are looking to weaponize radiation. So I think that at some point, they were tasked with creating weapons of mass destruction for the U.S. military. And you have to know, right? I mean, you have to believe that, oh, well, we're dealing with this dangerous substance of radiation. Well, how do we maybe use that as a weapon? It's twofold,
Well, I think that's where a lot of things come full circle. And so I want to sort of jump ahead from a historical standpoint, and maybe this is stuff that is not covered in part one. It might not be covered at all if you're talking exclusively about Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project. But talking a little bit about the bombings themselves, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which is something that I've written about before as well, is the questions that always come full circle is, what did they know and when did they know it, right? Those are the questions you ask about almost any historical event, particularly of negative consequence. The feeling that I'm getting from you in this research, and when a lot of this research took place, and a lot of the gruesome results that were as a result of what they did to people, is it safe to say it was clear relatively early on that this was very dangerous stuff that they were. I mean, this was going to be a new frontier in bombs and weapons and mass destruction, that they knew what they were dealing with. And then when it pertained to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they didn't exactly drop these new weapons that literally fried people from the inside out. They didn't drop them on, depots with boats and planes and, machines. They dropped them on people, lots and lots of people, purposely. Would you say that I'm describing these events accurately?
Yeah, certainly. And of course, I'm not an expert on Oppenheimer or the Manhattan Project, but my research tells me that most of the people, if not all the people, including Oppenheimer himself, didn't know that the military was going to use the bomb until they heard about it on the radio, that the bombing had happened. I think that most people at Los Alamos didn't know what they were working on until at all what they were working on until they heard it on the radio. And I would think that Oppenheimer didn't know they were going to use it until he heard it on the radio, that they had used it. So, but at the same time, I don't want to give Oppenheimer the benefit of the doubt. I mean, he's a person, he has agency, he's, sophisticated, intelligent person. Did he think that he would create this doom device for the US military and they would never use it? I mean, did he think that that was a possibility? So kind of grappling with that. I mean, maybe he was in denial about it the whole time. We want to think that people act rationally, but who knows? I mean, especially being kind of a crazed genius, something like that, a demented kind of troubled mind.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I know it's easy for you and I to say for the political and philosophical beliefs that we have, but I think, stepping back and looking at it from the whole, if you were to say, well, should I give these people the benefit of the doubt? My answer tends to gravitate towards, but they know who's cutting the checks, right?
Sure. Well, one thing I tried to do in the film was just highlight, when I came across it, which ones of the scientists were received Rockefeller Foundation scholarships.
Sure.
Maybe that's kind of a leftover, from my conspiracy days, but I think it's worthwhile underlining. Now, maybe I think if you go around the scientific establishment at that time, you might be hard pressed to find any scientist of any merit or standing who didn't receive a Rockefeller Foundation scholarship. So maybe it's not something that's as nefarious as, well, look at all the people who are involved in, the most extreme, violent parts of the U.S. military. They all got Rockefeller Foundation scholarships, But yeah, I don't know in terms of can you repeat your question just in terms of like who's cutting the checks for Oppenheimer? Or
Well, yeah. So like if you or I were hired today to work on some sort of top secret project, and we don't know for absolutely certain exactly what the application is going to be, but we're getting checks mailed to us that are being signed by the Department of Defense, I think that ought to be a huge red flag as to who's funding it and what it's going to be used for.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I mean, you would think so. And it's obviously the person heading the project, being the chief creative scientific mind behind the project, he knows what it is, obviously, and he knows it's a bomb, Alan. I mean, what else do you do? It's kind of the left liberal argument for like, well, what else do you use a gun for except for killing things? But I mean, it's a bomb, Alan. I don't know.
Yeah, you only use a bomb like that in self-defense. Those 100,000 civilians had to die because I was scared.
Now, if you want to get really, really, philosophical, I don't think, I'm not like a recreational McNuke kind of guy, because I don't think it's possible to detonate a nuclear weapon without infringing on someone's rights, in property rights, in an unintended way. It's just the nature of the device itself, unless you owned the entire state of Nevada or something,
Yeah. Well, that's because you haven't played enough Fallout. That's what that is.
Well, I played my fair share of Fallout, Alan.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up on this. So these people, perhaps a lot of people in the chain of command, there's a lot of secrecy involved. They don't know that it's ultimately going to be culminating with, and we're planning on dropping these bombs, tomorrow. But that's what happened. And so, okay, so the news is out there. The bombs have been dropped. There's this devastating destruction. But what I want to kind of harp on, and obviously this isn't necessarily Oppenheimer's. It's not like Oppenheimer looked on a map and said, "Let's bomb right here." He's not a general. But to not mince words about it, do you believe that the bombs? And I hate to be conspiratorial to you on this, but here we are, Patrick. Do you think that the targets were chosen and the bombs were used not just to make the Empire of Japan surrender, but to send a message?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, and it's like, but from a speculative standpoint, I mean, people have brought this up to argue against people who say we shouldn't have used the bombs, but they say, well, what we really needed to do was to stop and prevent the Soviets from invading Japan and inserting their influence there. much the same way that, we had a divided Europe. And I mean, that's just the empire, right? I mean, if you are an apologist for the US empire and think that there has to be a one world power and that it has to be the United States, I guess that makes sense. I'm not a realist or anything like that, but I think that if we are going to have a foreign policy, it should be one that puts America first. And I don't think that putting America first means global empire. But if you're someone who thinks, I mean, sure, if everything, if you think that the only way that we're going to have a stable world is if the United States dominates it, then I guess maybe it would make sense to, when you choose one person to slit their throat in front of the entire village to send a message to everyone, I guess maybe that's what you would want to do. But empires die brutally, just like their victims.
Well, I think because I know what I've written about before is that if you look at some of the comments and correspondence from people at the time, of course, a lot in hindsight, but even some before. You look at people like Ike and you look at Admiral Leahy and people who were telling Truman, I don't think you should do this. That would seem to indicate to me not just that they thought that the target wasn't appropriate, those particular cities, but that they knew what the bombs were capable of.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, possibly. I mean, is that Admiral Jim Leahy?
Jim? I'm not.
He.
I'm not. I don't remember the first name now.
It was his second in command, like Randy. Is his name Randy or something like that?
I don't remember. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would have to think that you would be able to blockade the island of Japan. I mean, I'm not one for sanctions and killing hundreds of thousands of Iraqi children with sanctions regime, but I would think that if you were worried about the Soviet Union invading, you have complete naval dominance over Japan. They're essentially a defeated enemy, aside from, the guerrilla warfare that would ensue invading the island. But wouldn't you just be able to surround it with your ships and do patrols? That way you would keep the Soviets out, but you would also cut off any kind of, oil and imports like that, any military imports. That's probably what I would do. I mean, if I were in that situation.
Well, I guess what I'm driving at, and I've made comments to this effect before, is that even because there's moral relativism and it's easy to look at things in hindsight and say, oh well, I with my modern day temperaments and with all the knowledge of the Pacific Theater and everything I know today, I would have of course done this. I know that that's easy to do. There's some random boomer con out there right now saying, well, we had to do this. We had to do this because they wouldn't surrender. And I think what I always get caught up on is that those words are carrying a lot of weight in statements like that. Like, who's they that needs to surrender? Did the 100,000 civilians that were going to work that day and got their skin melted off, did they have to surrender? Or were they the ones that we were waiting to surrender? Because if they don't surrender, the children whose shadows are like melted onto the side of the recess and the schoolyard, were they not surrendering? And so that's why we had to drop the bombs. Like I guess what I'm saying is that there's even in our community, even people who claim to believe in, individualism and the personal sovereignty, tend to talk and paint in these really broad collectivist strokes when it comes to sacred cows like, World War II and the Greatest Generation and all these generals and Truman and Roosevelt and these big decisions that were made and these huge battles that were fought. And I just keep on coming back around to not even getting into World War II and the rights and the wrongs and the geopolitics. We're not even getting into that, Patrick. Just getting into, okay, you've got these bombs. You want to drop them. You want to hurt Japan. Did you have to drop them on huge civilian population centers?
Right. Yeah. No, obviously not. I mean, I keep thinking about it and trying to put myself, I guess, in that mindset. I mean, so many people are so emotionally attached to this issue, And what you'll hear on, you'll see on YouTube comments and Facebook comments like, well, my daddy was, he was a Marine and fought in Saipan, and he said that the Japs were fierce warriors and they would never surrender and they would slit your throat and all that kind of stuff. Like, okay, yes, I mean, you were in a war and the Japanese were fierce adversaries, right? They eventually did surrender. I mean, unconditionally, except, I mean, we still allowed them to keep their emperor, right, Alan? I'm
Yes.
a little
Yeah.
fuzzy on that, but it's like, okay, well, obviously there was a cost to them that made them surrender. And a lot of this, I think, is, I don't know, but when I think about that, the Tom Cruise movie, A Few Good Men.
Mhm.
And at the end, there's I think Colonel Jessup is played by what's his name?
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, of
Yeah.
course. And in the famous, cross-examination towards the end, he's talking about, essentially, I'm the guy that has to do the dirty work while you, Mr. Lawyer Pants, are sitting there making moral judgments about what I do and complain about the blanket of freedom that I provide. But at the end of the day, he's arrested, because he's court-martialed for committing a war crime, essentially. Or I don't know if it's a war crime per se, but he ordered the code red at the beginning of the movie, which is to silence another member of the unit for speaking out, to silence a whistleblower, essentially. And I think I see a lot of people talking like that in the Facebook and YouTube comments that, I'm grappling with these superior moral claims, so therefore I'm the one who keeps you safe because I do the dirty work of grappling with this. So all you should do is shut the fuck up and be grateful, that I'm doing this. But objectively speaking, they're committing war crimes, right? So
Sure.
I
Yeah.
see that in the law too a lot. I mean, it's incredibly stressful to be having the weight of someone's life on your shoulders, and at some point you have to disassociate from it, and not be too close and be too personal with it. But you have to be careful with that disassociation, because the disassociation might allow you to carry out your function in grappling with these moral issues, but you can go too far to the other end of the spectrum and just become cold-hearted and do things that are, unethical.
Well, I think we can wrap up on that note just by saying, because Patrick, I'm not a particularly religious or spiritual person, but I believe in the golden rule. I really do. And I think I believe in it because you can apply it. I mean, that's what these great foundational principles do for you, right? You can apply it to practically any situation, and it helps and guides your thought and guides your decision making. And I would think, in your analogy with the law, the golden rule applies, is that, well, you have a job to do, but you also want to provide counsel in the way that you would want it to be provided for you. And if the situation were reversed and you were having the worst day of your life, and I think the same thing as it pertains to geopolitics or foreign policy is that, well, if a war has to be fought, if our nation's interests truly are at stake, I'm not melting children. Like you I mean, you got to draw the line somewhere, right?
Right. Yeah. If I were being charged with a serious crime, I would want my attorney to be empathetic or sympathetic if he couldn't be empathetic. But I wouldn't want him staying up all night worrying about me every second that he's not at work, because he wouldn't be an effective advocate at that point. I mean, you get too emotionally involved and you can't see objectively. So,
well, I don't know about that. If I ever get in trouble, Patrick, I want you up in the wee hours of the morning thinking about how you can get me out of it. But on that note, where can people go to support you, watch the film, and check out more of Vital Dissent?
Yeah, so you can go to vitaldissent.com, and actually there's a transcript page there. You see in the right-hand column there on screen, the video is linked there. There's also a hyperlink transcript with the sources, so you know that I'm not just talking out my ass about it. But you can also go to libertarianinstitute.org, and You can find it there, but go to libertarianinstitute.org/donate because we're currently doing our fundraiser, our fund drive, and the funds that I use to pay my producer to create this like high level. I mean, it's well produced. It looks professional. It's great. The funds from Libertarian Institute allow me to do that. So if you want to support my content, support that, head on over there and help us out with our campaign. Otherwise, yeah, you can watch it on my website or at youtube.com/@Vital Dissent.
On that note, when can people expect part 2?
Yeah, that's a great question. I should probably start writing it, Alan.
Okay.
I would like it to come out in September, but you know, with my kids, and then we're taking a week-long vacation in August, and there's a bunch of court stuff going on between now and then. So.
All right. Well, my birthday is September 27th, so I want it for my birthday, and if I don't get it, I'm going to do a video series called The Truth About Patrick MacFarlane.
Nice.
And it's going to be a black and white picture of you and the whole shebang. Because God knows if there's a black and white picture of you in the thumbnail, it's got to be bad. You did something awful.
Right, yes. Yeah.
All right. Guys, we're going to be back to wrap up the show right after this commercial break. Don't go away. If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley. Like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Alan Mosley TV. You can follow me on Twitter. Twitter.com/Alan Mosley TV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/Alan Mosley TV. Also, if you're more of a listener than a watcher, you can get us on iTunes, Google, Spotify, and more. Thanks to Spotify Podcasts. Just It's Too Late with Alan Mosley or @Alan Mosley TV. Dave, do you have a final thought?
No. You know, after a week off and coming back to a banger like this was great. To have the creator of Family Guy on again.
Yeah,
is amazing, right? And I can't wait to see what we have in the future.
Actually,
he's great. That was a lot of fun.
Actually, we do have a lot of guests coming up over like the month of August going into September. And on the one hand, it's like that's great. Gets lots of cool engagement, talk to interesting people, you know, get different viewpoints and all that. On the other hand, we have to not say certain things, you know what I'm saying?
I'll try to be better.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah, we might even have a black guy on the show. What?
Neat.
Yeah, right? All right. It's funny because it's true, though. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching it. Wait, hold on. Are we doing an after party?
Yeah, we have to after taking last week off.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Ourselves.
Guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of It's Too Late, and we will see you next week. That's right, Jay Forte. I can't believe it. Oh my god.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Dude, I'm worn out.
It's been a long week.
Like, not just physically tired, but really just tired of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I do that, like at the end of my shift at work, I'm cleaning all day, and then I have to clean myself, and I'm like, when can I just stop doing this?
Yeah, nobody gives a shit about you.